Hey class. So I had to read a little ahead on this one, and in doing so, discovered that much of the work of researcher Jim Cummins centered around bilingualism and the study of cognition within learning a second language. Cummins brought to light two distinct yet interrelated language skills known as basic interpersonal communication skills, or BICS, and cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP. So, BICS is basically the sum total of spoken communication and verbal language interaction, including watching media that takes place in a classroom and at home. CALP refers to a more internalized language that students use to perform individualized work processes within the classroom. One distinction important to our work with English language learners made by Cummins and many other theorists cited by our text is that CALP often trails BICS by 3 or more years in learners of a second language. BICS occurs much more naturally as ELL's students begin to feel more comfortable communicating within the classroom and with their native English speaking peers. An effective transition to CALP, however, would be easily overlooked if one assumed that ELLs who appear to have mastered a sturdy level of English speaking proficiency within the classroom would also have skills that automatically translate to individual utility with classroom assignments. The attached, that would be a misconception. The attached diagram of Cummins quadrants illustrates a continuum of cognitive demand on a learner in relationship to how much information is given in a certain context. Quadrant 4, the most difficult in characteristic language and learning activities, is the area in which an English language learner would have to rely heavily on CALP. Because English language learners are said to be fluent in BICS far earlier than their proficiency with respect to CALP, as I mentioned, it would be important to incorporate more BICS skills into a lesson plan to facilitate entry into the proximal zones of CALP for ELLs. So, for example, something that would be very high in cognitive demand but low in context for me would be this assignment. So, I chose this assignment, which I found to be kind of ironic. Um, I may be incorrect in saying so, but I have somehow overlooked the information part of this module that includes chapters 1 and 2. And I have read ahead. I've used the textbook's index and research all over the internet to find information to inform my writing for this discussion. Judging from my own struggles as someone who considers himself to be English language proficient, I would imagine English language learners fulfilling the same assignment would have an even greater difficulty. A classroom teacher preparing students at varying levels of English language proficiency might spend time showing the class the model of Cummins quadrants and brainstorm different classroom activities and where they might fall on the continuum. The teacher would encourage discussion between the students on how much context they see offered in each situation and how much thinking they have to do to complete the activity. Activities such as washing one's hands or lining up for lunch would likely fall into quadrant 1 and rely heavily on BICS. Other assignments such as research papers and advanced math tests would fall to the opposite side in quadrant 4. Familiarizing the students with the quadrants and various forms of BICS and CALP in a more concrete context, quadrant 3 would greatly help them to work with the material on their own in quadrant 4 without the aid of given context clues. Clearly, this theoretical classroom would have to be high school or college level, Providing a classroom that is rich in context for the abstract concepts, highly demanding ELL's cognition in this case, would provide a step back that might facilitate self-efficacy to do the work on their own. Now, gladly stepping out of this theoretical model, I will assess the knowledge, skills, and dispositions important to have as a teacher of linguistically diverse students. First of all, teachers should be knowledgeable about as many cultural groups as possible and to do their due diligence in researching groups represented by students in their classroom at the very least. Knowledge of students' primary languages would be an absolute asset towards setting up some early language markers throughout the classroom. Finding the material covered in this class to be an extremely useful knowledge base for my future work with these students. Teachers should possess advanced interpersonal communication skills. We talked about BACS, which is basic. Teachers' interpersonal communication skills should be well advanced, I would think. They should be skilled in methods of teaching English language acquisition and the modification of standard learning content for language learners. We talked about in chapter 1 or 2 about the different aspects of language. And so to know all of these and how they interact and any similarities there are between different languages, I think would be so important. I definitely think that your second language builds on your first. As a speaker of Spanish at one time, I definitely need to brush up on it. My knowledge of English and how the English language works definitely informed my ability to learn Spanish. Lost my place. So ideally, a bilingual teacher would be able to help language learners maintain their first language while learning English as a second language. A skilled teacher would find new and creative ways to engage students in multicultural exchange as well as language learning in both directions. A skilled teacher can connect all the dots, so to speak, see the greatest potential outcome in his or her students, and see how each student can help one another to achieve a sum total positive for the classroom as a whole. A teacher's disposition is one of the most important factors in creating and fostering a safe and caring school environment. Teachers should be warm and welcoming. All students should feel valued, and amongst these values should be the student's home culture and native language. Patience is also an endless virtue in teaching. Different cultures and different cognitive approaches make use of time differently. It's important for teachers to understand that learning will not take place in the teacher's time, but in the time that can only be facilitated by them through patience. A personality that is encouraging and engaging with high hopes for student learning outcomes will create an environment where students can learn and grow. Thank you for listening to what I found to be a very difficult, though rewarding assignment. Take care.